Hi, good morning, my friends. We're back with the Spirits book reading, and we're still at the introduction because it's a very big one. So, we are at part 9 from the introduction. So, let's continue. The movement of inert objects is a proven fact. However, it remains to be seen whether or not there are manifestations of intelligence in such movement, and if so, what their source is. We are not referring to manifestations involving the intelligent movement of certain objects, to manifestations involving verbal communications, or to communications written directly by the medium's hand. These kind of manifestations are quite obvious to those who have deeply investigated the subject, but they may not, at first glance, be sufficiently independent on the medium's own will to be conceiving to a new observer. Thus, we will focus only on the writings obtained with the help of a pencil attached to some object, such as a small basket, a planchette, etc. As we have stated, the way in which the medium's fingers are placed upon the object challenges the notion that any sort of skillful interference is at work or interference in the way the words are formed. For the sake of discussion, however, let us suppose that by some extraordinary ability, the medium might be able to deceive the most attentive observer. How could one explain the nature of the responses themselves when they are beyond the scope of the medium's own ideas and knowledge? We are not referring here to simple one-syllable replies, but to many pages written with astonishing speed on a subject that may either be spontaneous or specifically requested. From the hand of a medium completely unversed in literature stream forth poems of such sublimity and impeccable purity that they are worthy of the best human poets. In addition, what is even more remarkable is the fact that these pages are being produced everywhere, and the number of mediums is rapidly increasing. Are these occurrences real or not? To this question, we can only reply, watch and observe. The opportunities will not be lacking. Above all, however, observe persistently over a long period of time and under the appropriate conditions. How have our antagonists responded to the evidence? They say, you're victims of either charlatanism or illusion. First, we will reply that charlatanism is not likely where there is no profit to be made. Charlatans do not work for free. It would be a prank at the most. But by what strange coincidence could pranksters have an understanding amongst themselves from one end of the world to the other, leading them to act in the same way to produce the same effects and to give identical answers on the same subjects in their various languages? If not in the exact same words, at least implying the same meaning. Why would serious, respectable, and educated persons cater to such maneuvers, and for what purpose? Why has the patience and skill required for producing this phenomena been found even among children? After all, unless mediums are mere passive instruments, it is obvious that we would have to confer on them capabilities and knowledge far beyond their age and social position. Next, our opponents state that if no fraud is involved, then both parties, mediums and observers, might be deceived by an illusion. There is no question that the quality of the witnesses does carry a certain weight. It is therefore reasonable to ask whether the spirit doctrine, which today has millions of followers, only recruits from among the uneducated. The phenomena on which Spiritism is based seems so extraordinary that we can understand such doubt. but we cannot accept the claim of certain skeptics that they hold a monopoly on common sense. Those who, without respect for the conventions and moral values of their adversaries, label as incompetent all those who do not agree with their opinions. For judicious persons, the opinions of educated individuals who have observed, studied, and thought about a matter that at length will always be, if not actual proof, then a likely hypothesis at the very least. After all, Spiritism has grabbed the attention of serious individuals who have neither an interest in propagating an error nor time to waste on futilities. Number 10. Among our opponents' objections, there are some that are more plausible, at least in appearance, because they are based on observation and raised by serious individuals. One such observation refers to the language of certain spirits, which does not seem worthy of the loftiness that might be attributed to supernatural beings. However, if we refer to the summary of the doctrine presented above, we will see that spirits themselves teach us that they are not all equal to one another in knowledge or moral qualities, and that we must not take everything that spirits tell us at face value. It falls to sensible persons to separate the good from the bad. Obviously, those who conclude from this fact that we deal solely with evil beings whose sole intention is to deceive are unfamiliar with the communications given during meetings in which high-order spirits manifest. If they were, they would think otherwise. It is unfortunate that chance has served these persons so badly by showing them only the decadent side of the spirit world. On the other hand, we do not want to presume that an affinity of inclinations might have attracted evil, deceitful, and full-mouthed spirits to them rather than good ones. We could conclude at most that the strength of their principles is not solid enough to preserve them from evil, and since they find a certain pleasure in satisfying their own curiosity, evil spirits take advantage of this fact to mingle with them, whereas good spirits stay away. Judging the character of spirits by such facts would be illogical as judging the characters of an entire people by what is said and done in a group of a few wild or disreputable individuals who do not deserve the company of either learned or sensible persons. Those who judge in this way are like foreigners who enter a great capital by way of the worst outskirts and then proceed to judge the entire population on the city according to the customs and speech of this one neighborhood. In the spirit world, there is also a good and evil society. If such individuals would actually study what happens among high-order spirits, they would realize that the celestial city does not contain only the dregs of society. Nonetheless, they might ask, do high-order spirits really come to us? And we would reply, do not remain on the outskirts. Watch, observe, and judge for yourselves. The facts are here for everybody to see, except those to whom the words of Jesus apply. They have eyes, but do not see. They have ears, but do not hear. A different variation on this opinion considers all spirit communications and all physical manifestations as being nothing more than the intervention of some diabolical power, a new Proteus, who can assume any form it wants in order to better deceive us. We do not consider such an idea to be worthy of serious examination, and thus we will not dwell on here. It has already been refuted by what we stated earlier. We would only add that, if such were the case, we would have to concede that the devil is sometimes very wise, very reasonable, and especially very moral, or that there are good devils. In fact, how could we believe that God would allow only the spirit of evil to manifest himself in order to deceive us, without providing us the counsels of good spirits as a counterweight? If God could not do so, it would imply powerlessness. If God could but did not, it would be incompatible with divine goodness. Either supposition would of course be blasphemous. However, we would like to emphasize that accepting the fact that evil spirits do really communicate means accepting the fact that spirit manifestations do really occur. And since they do occur, it is only with divine permission. Without being impious, how can we believe that God would permit only evil manifestations to the exclusion of good ones? Such a doctrine is contrary both to the simplest notions of common sense and religion. Number 11. Other opponents add that it is strange that we seem to concern ourselves only with the spirits of well-known individuals, and they ask why these are the only ones who manifest. Like many other errors, this one comes from superficial observation. Among the spirits who manifest spontaneously, those who are unknown outnumber the illustrious ones. They often take names that are allegorical or in keeping with their character. As for those whom we evoke, except in the case of relatives or friends, it is quite natural that we would prefer those we know rather than those we do not know. As for illustrious personalities, they are the ones who are noticed more, and so they attract more attention. These opponents also consider it strange that the spirits of eminent individuals casually respond to our appeal, and that they sometimes concern themselves with matters that seem insignificant when compared to what they accomplished during their lives. However, it is not so surprising to those who know that the power and respect that such individuals enjoy on earth do not necessarily entitle them to any supremacy in the spirit world. The spirits confirm the gospel words. The great shall be abased, and the small shall be exalted, which must be understood as relating to the position each of us will occupy among them. Thus, those who had been first on the earth may find themselves among the last in the spiritual world. Those who make us bow to them in this life may return as the most humble laborers. For when they leave the earthly life behind, they leave all their grandeur behind as well. The most powerful monarchs might find themselves to be below their lowest ranking soldiers. Now, number 12, a fact borne out by observation and confirmed by the spirits themselves is that low-order spirits often present themselves using well-known and respected names. Thus, how can we be sure that those who say that they had been, for example, Socrates, Julius Caesar, Charlemagne, Ferdinand, Napoleon, Washington, etc., had really animated those individuals? This question has been raised even among some earnest followers of the Spiritist doctrine. They accept the intervention and manifestation of spirits, but they ask what control we may have over their identity. Such control can indeed be very difficult to establish, but although identities cannot be verified in a way that is as authentic as the attestation of public records, they may nonetheless at least be verified by deduction according to certain indicators. When spirits of those personally known to us, relatives or friends, for example, especially if they have only recently died, manifest, their language usually corresponds perfectly to the characteristics that were familiar to us. This in itself is an indication of identity. Any remaining doubts, however, are settled when such spirits speak of private affairs or remember family matters known only to those involved. A son could hardly be mistaken about the language of his father or mother, nor parents about the language of their child. During these intimate occasions, the most extraordinary incidents sometimes occur, conceiving even the most incredulous. Hardened skeptics are often startled by the unexpected revelations made to them. One other characteristic of such communications is often enough to verify a spirit's identity. Handwriting. As we have stated, a medium's handwriting generally changes with the spirit who is evoked, reproducing it exactly the same each time the spirit communicates. In cases involving persons recently deceased, it has been demonstrated innumerable times that the handwriting reveals striking similarities to that of the person during life. We have seen perfectly identical signatures. Nevertheless, we are far from citing this fact as a rule or as a frequent occurrence. We simply mention it as something worth nothing. Spirits who have reached a certain degree of purity are the only ones who are free of all corporeal influences. As long as they are not yet completely dematerialized, this is the expression they use, they preserve most of the ideas, inclinations, and even idiosyncrasies they had on earth, and this is a further means of recognizing them. Above all, however, we arrive at such recognition through a multitude of details that only an attentive and continuous observation can reveal. We have observed spirits who had been authors, discussing their own works or doctrines, approving or condemning certain parts of them, and others remembering unknown or little-known circumstances concerning their life or death. All these indications, which are at least typical evidence of the identity, are the only ones that can be employed when dealing with abstract matters. Hence, if the identity of an evoked spirit may be established to a certain extent in certain cases, then there is no reason why it cannot be established in others. And although we do not have the same means of control involving persons who died at a more remote time, we always have the means of referring to their language and character. That is, the spirit of a morally upright person will never communicate like the spirit of a perverse or immoral one. As for spirits who assume respectable names, they soon betray themselves by their language and maxims. For instance, a spirit claiming to be Felenon, who unexpectedly offended common sense and good morals, would thereby expose its charade. But if the thoughts expressed were always pure, without contradiction, and consistent with the elevated character of Felenon, there would be no reason to doubt the spirit's identity. If such were not the case, one would have to believe that a spirit who is known to proclaim that what is morally right could at the same time resort to useless falsities. Experience has taught us that spirits of the same degree and character, and who are animated by the same sentiments, are united into groups and families. Thus, the number of spirits is incalculable, and we are far from knowing them all, must remain nameless to us. Spirits of the same category as Felenon may therefore come in his stead, and may even be sent by him, presenting itself under his name because it is identical to him, and may act as his substitute, and because it provides us with a name so that we can focus our ideas. After all, what does it really matter if the spirit is or is not Felenon himself, if it only talks about noble matters in a way in which Felenon himself would have talked it is a good spirit. The name it uses does not matter, and it is frequently no one than a means for us to fix our thought. However, in more intimate vocations, the same does not apply because, as we have already stated, an identity can be established by means of proofs that are in one way or another obvious. There is no doubt that spirit substitution may occasion a number of mistakes that result in errors and oftentimes deceit. Such is one of the difficulties faced by practical spiritism. However, we have never said that this science is easy or that it may be learned effortlessly, as is also the case with any other science. We cannot repeat too often that Spiritism demands constant and prolonged study, and that since we cannot produce spirit phenomena at will, we must wait for them to occur on their own, frequently when we least expect it. For attentive and patient observers, the facts are abundant, for they can discover thousands of characteristic nuances that appear to them like rays of light. The same applies to every other branch of science. While the superficial observer sees in a flower only an elegant form, the botanist discovers in it treasures for the thought. Well, guys, this was the reading of today, and I hope you have liked as much as I do. I'll see you next time, and God bless you all. Bye-bye.